So now we got Dune.
Yeah, let's talk about Dune. So we'll talk about
Hmm.
how do we want to do this. I think we should do the book differences kind of at the end.
Yeah. The difference at the end, and also I want to discuss like the future of it at the end,
Yeah,
which we could put that part of spoilers in case people don't want to hear it.
yeah. So just to give some background, I read the book and literally finished the book 2 hours before I saw part 2. I actually hadn't seen part... Yeah, literally 2 hours. I finished it, and then 2 hours later went and saw the movie.
Wait, did you watch part 1 on Saturday, like before you finished the book?
Yeah, because part 1's only the first half of the book, so I read enough into the book that I
so
knew.
you had already... Yeah, that makes sense. And then you finished the book, and then 2 hours later saw the movie.
Yep. It was, honestly, that's the closest I've ever been to, like, finishing a book and then seeing the movie, and it was a really interesting experience. I really enjoyed it.
It was fresh.
Yeah, it was super fresh.
All right, well, so how do you want to do this? Do you want to talk about part 1 first, part 2 first, combined? Like, how do you want to do it?
I guess
let's at least give us our initial, like, our thoughts of part 1.
Okay.
It doesn't need to go in depth, just our thoughts.
I really liked part 1. I think I would give part 1 a 9. I haven't really thought about it as much as part 2, but I think I'd give it a 9. This type of sci-fi is so right up my alley, and the director who did it with the visuals and the music and the sound, Denis, or how I've heard
the sound is awesome.
Yeah, the sound design was great. I loved the first part, and the first part, just to touch on it a little bit, I won't go into spoilers, but the first part really followed the book. There were a few scenes left out, but obviously you're gonna have to do that in the movie, but like part 1 was very close to the book, and I really liked it.
Okay, so for me, never read the books. I love part 1 too. I would give part 1 an 8 out of 10. And I wonder if it's the difference is not reading the book. I enjoyed part 1. It felt like an incomplete story because obviously it wasn't complete. It was a little slower, and I will say I was a little more confused in part 1 than I was in part 2.
That's one thing I wanted to hear. Yeah, if you got confused at all.
In part 2, I wasn't as confused. I started piecing things together. I feel like they started explaining some of the lore. But in part 1, I was definitely confused.
Yeah,
maybe that's just me being slow. I don't know.
I think they definitely made a lot more changes from the book in part 2, and I think it was because of that, to make it a little bit more easier to understand for people who haven't read the books. There's some other reasons that we'll get into.
I was a little confused, but that being said, part 1 felt like such a different movie than part 2. Like, it really did.
Yeah.
Part 1 was more, I don't know, how would you explain it, like, without getting into spoilers? There wasn't a lot of action, but there was a lot of tragedy. Like, it was kind of...
tragedy and setup. Like, there's a ton of, like, the whole thing is a story about setup from, like, religions setting up these, like, prophecies and setting up genes from different races to create the, like, certain kind of person. So yeah, the first movie I think reflected that a lot, where they're setting up a lot of
I liked who played his father. Oh, what's his face?
Oscar Isaac playing Leto.
I really liked him, and I liked. We'll talk about it in part 2. We don't need to even get in spoilers with part 1. I just wanted the initial thoughts, unless you want to.
I think we can focus more on part 2.
Okay, so part 2. Okay, let me say what I think first, and then I want to see what you say, and then also, I'm just so curious to see the difference between non-book reader and book reader, because we have pretty similar tastes in things. Okay, so Dune Part 2 review and score. I'll preface by saying this. I love sci-fi. I love political sci-fi. I love movies that aren't CGI fest. I do not mind slow burn. I do not mind weird aspects of movies. I thought this movie was near perfect. I loved every minute of it. It didn't even feel like it was almost 3 hours long. I loved the lore building in this one more than the first one. I loved the characterization build-up of Paul and other characters, the conflicts between the Freemen and the political aspects they added in this one. I loved everything about, that's not even including just the sound design was awesome. Every little gadget and trinket they used, even when they were using those floating things, everything sounds so cool. And the visuals, my God, that's probably the best thing about this movie is the visuals.
Yeah.
Like, this guy knows how to film. Everything feels so epic. I loved it. Honestly, like, if I combined part part 1 and part 2. This movie, I'll say this movie made me love part 1 even more, and actually made me want to go rewatch part 1 more. I would give this movie a 10 out of 10. I loved it. I love this lore, and it gets me excited, and I hope they build a whole universe of these movies.
I'm pretty much in the same boat. I really loved this movie, and like I said before, this is like right up my alley. It was definitely different than the book, but I think the changes they made make sense and help non-book readers, so I'm okay with them. We'll get more into that, but yeah, I gave this one a 10. I loved it. The way it was shot was epic. The CG, there obviously has to be CG because there's not like giant worms that we can film, but it didn't
feel like
it didn't feel like CG. The way it was shot and the way it looked just felt like perfect for the world.
Like
And
it all felt real. Like it felt like I was in that world.
yeah, I agree. A side note, I'm really glad to hear you call them Freeman because that's how I read it the entire time. And then I get into the movie and they say Fremen.
Fremen.
Yeah, well, in the movie they say Fremen. So I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to catch myself a bunch.
I was watching some reviews too. A lot of people say Freeman.
Okay, good.
So I wonder if it's just preference of how to say it.
Yeah, maybe. I've been itching for a really good sci-fi, and this definitely scratched that itch for sure. It was awesome. Loved it.
We got to get into spoilers though,
Yes.
so we can actually talk because there's so much.
Spoiler alert for Dune Part 2 and Part 1 we'll probably be referencing.
Yeah, just
But-
all things Dune.
So if you haven't seen it, we highly recommend it. Go see it, especially if you're into sci-fi. Very good movie. But spoiler alert for Dune Part 2.
Also, before we mention, we'll mention before we get into the books too, in case you don't want
Yeah.
the book spoiled. Okay, so man, where do we even start with this?
So-
I guess the direction I feel like is a good place to start. When they got, what's that planet called with that family with the black sun?
Yeti Prime, the Harkonnen homeworld.
That, that was so interesting. And that planet, actually, this Dune in general, this movie is so dark and twisted and weird.
Yeah, it is.
Is that how the book is?
Yeah, pretty much. Like
Like in a good way, not like a bad way.
yeah, the book is a little worse, probably, but
I've heard.
but yeah, it definitely.
That planet looked cool.
That planet, that's a perfect way to do an alien planet. The lighting was so just like weird and off, and it looked so
Yeah.
ominous, but so
It
cool
was like-
and visually interesting.
Like the fireworks were going off, but it looked all like weird or whatever that what stuff was.
Yeah, I loved how their fireworks mimicked their sun. It makes sense. Like ours is bright like the sun, and theirs is all dark and the black flashing. And yeah, it looked so cool.
That arena scene was cool, and the weird guards and those black suits are weird. It was just such a weird planet.
It makes sense that the Harkonnens are from a weird planet because they're a weird people.
I guess I'm gonna ask you questions because I'm just curious about everything, and
Okay.
I'll get your thoughts. So that's the Harkonnens planet. So it's the big dude that used
The
that device
Baron.
to float.
The Baron.
The Baron. So what did you think of his character compared to what your thoughts were while reading it? Like, did
Honestly,
it live up?
Yeah, they nailed it. He's as gross as I pictured him. You don't really see the suspensors, but the way he floated around was kind of creepy and weird. And yeah, I feel like they nailed that
Especially in the
character.
first movie.
Yeah,
The two brothers or his nephews, were those good? I thought Austin Butler did great as what's his name?
Fade Routha.
Yeah, like just psycho.
Honestly, the movie kind of elevated that character for me with his portrayal of Fade Routha.
Really?
I thought that was such a great portrayal. He was so like menacing and creepy, and I did not have that high of hopes. Like after seeing, I've only seen Austin Butler in Masters of the Air. I haven't seen the Elvis movie, so he's pretty flat in that. You know, kind of cool, calm, collected.
Yeah.
But man, he can act like a psycho, and he did really well playing Fade Routha. Yeah,
I was surprised by that too.
I was also surprised
like,
how
wow.
much he sounded like the Baron. Like there were some times where it's like, wait, was that Fade? It sounded just like the Baron.
I was thinking that too. Like you couldn't tell. Like I wonder if did he purposely do that, or did it just naturally sound like that?
I think he must have done that on purpose. I think, and he did a spot on
He sounded
impression.
identical.
Yeah.
So the whole Harkonnens, Harkonnens, how you say it?
Yep.
And then Batista's the other brother, right?
Yeah, Raban.
Is he similar to how you pictured? Like, is that character similar?
Yeah, he's not. I feel like he's featured more heavily in the movie, or you saw him more. But yeah,
really?
basically similar. Yeah, just kind of a crazy person who's ruling with an iron fist.
The Barkanins. So explain to me. So they're the great houses, right? The Barkanins and
The
what is
Harkonnens.
Paul's Harkonnens? I say Barkanins. Oh, Harkonnens and what's
All is
Paul's?
the Atreides.
The Atreides. Those are the two main ones in these movies. Is there a third one?
Those are the two that are focused on. I don't think we really even hear mention of the other ones' names.
No, I mean they flew in at the end.
Yeah, but you never see him.
We didn't
Really.
even see him. So the biggest thing for me as a non-book reader is that twist I didn't see coming of the mom being Harkonnen.
Yeah, that's a
I
pretty
didn't see
big
that
twist.
coming. They got me. I was like, oh, because I had no idea. And I thought that was a good twist too. I'm like, oh, he's related to that dude.
It is a good twist. And it makes sense because the Bene Gesserit are all about like controlling the genes and trying to find this pure bloodline that can like harness extra power. And so it makes sense to mix the Harkonnens and the Atreides in a kind of shadowy way.
Yeah, and she's mentioned that she didn't know until she took the worm poison. Was that spoiler for book? Was that in the book too?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she didn't know. I think in the book, Paul tells her or something. But yeah, that's very similar to the book.
Out first in the book.
Yeah, I think so. They do a lot of weird timeline stuff where it's just like slightly off. He learns things at different times, and yeah, so it's hard to remember.
I read somewhere. So one thing I liked in the film is the Fremen, however you want to say it, how they're very divided. Are they that divided in the book?
No,
in terms of belief.
The whole like north versus south was made for the movie, I think, to kind of give the audience.
I liked that though. Like, I thought that's realistic. Did you like that change or no?
I didn't mind that change. I think there were some Fremen who may not have immediately believed Paul was the Lisan al-Gaib. Overwhelmingly, they seemed to do. They did seem to believe it, but I think it was a good change to kind of show the audience that, yes, there's this kind of story, but it's not all believed by everybody, and have that kind of tension there.
It felt more real, to be honest, because it would be that divided, in our world.
Yeah, that change didn't bother me that much, no.
So the movie started kind of where the first one ended, right? It was Paul, not really a Freeman yet, but bearing that guy. Janus. So that's a question I had for you too. So I was a little confused. So he has visions from the spice, right?
Yeah.
Now sometimes his visions don't come true. Is that what I was getting at? That guy was supposed to be his mentor, but he ended up having to kill him instead.
The visions are interesting because it's like possible futures, and slight spoilers for the book. They don't go too much into this in the movies. In his visions, he kind of sees the now and the future and the past all at the same time, and the stuff that happens impacts the futures he sees. So if he moves a certain way, it'll like narrow and start changing to a certain future. So he sees like multiple possible futures, or even all the possible futures.
Interesting. So from the visions he was getting in Dune Part 1 of that guy being his mentor, that was just a possible future. So when he saw him at the end of the movie, he didn't want to kill him, right? Because he thought that was going to be his mentor.
Yeah, and he just had never killed anybody before, and he wanted...
Oh, that too.
Yeah, but yeah, he probably thought, like, this guy's going to be important to me to learn the culture, and yeah.
So he didn't really understand his vision, so he drank the poison.
Yeah, he definitely got more clarity about the visions after he drank the water of life. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm not confused by that, but I was just curious by like that. So just movie wise, I'll just say things in non-book reader I liked, and then I'll let you take the floor of what you thought fully. Okay. I liked the beginning when they showed where they bury the people, and they use like the water to fill, and they're like, I'll never drink this no matter how thirsty I am, pretty much.
Yeah, and Jessica throws up.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. I also liked the whole first, I guess, third of the movie of Paul kind of learning the ways, and him kind of reluctantly not wanting to lead, and him even saying like it's changing from friendships to praise, pretty much.
Yeah.
I liked his training. I thought it was hilarious. So when Paul's mom, they basically told Paul's mom, you're going to be this elder lady or whatever, which I want to ask more about that with you later on. And she reluctantly does it. And that whole storyline was so weird to me. Again, when I say weird, I don't mean in like a bad way. I just mean so weird. I don't fully understand what's going on with that. Like, she could talk to her baby, and also like she sounds all scary and weird sometimes. Is that actually her, or is she like the descendant elders in her too?
Yeah.
Do you know?
So her sounding different is a Bene Gesserit technique called the voice. So that didn't necessarily have to do with her becoming the Reverend Mother. She may have gotten better at it, but that's something they train their whole life.
Oh.
And basically it's like you spend time with someone, and then you can attune your voice to them and speak in a way to drive them to do something. So in the book, it seemed more subtle, of like getting the pitch right so that you like influence them. But I like how they did it in the movie with that crazy noise of just, you're gonna do this kind of thing. I thought that was a really good change to make it much more impactful.
Oh, that makes sense.
Whereas the
Now,
Reverend...
what about her talking to the baby?
Yeah, so that's a little more interesting. So when she drinks the water of life, she attunes with the Reverend Mothers and gets all of their memories. So she gets all this knowledge. She like feels all their feelings of their whole lives and everything. The side effect of her being pregnant when she does that is that the baby gets that too. So
that baby's like super smart too?
Yeah. That baby's like a fully fledged person times however many Reverend Mothers there are.
Oh, that's like creepy.
Yeah. They changed some things from the book that they probably needed to, and we'll get more into that. So that's why she can talk to the fetus, and the fetus can like talk back. In the books, it's more like they're sharing feelings, like the mother like kind of comforts them, and then you can feel the feelings back. But you know, I think it was a good change to make it so that they could talk.
Yeah, because that whole mother storyline was so creepy and weird.
It is definitely
weird.
weird.
That was the weirdest. That was the weirdest part of the movie for me.
Yeah, I could see that.
Well, and obviously the Harkonnens too are just kind of weird.
Yeah, they're just freaks.
yeah, literally. So, but anyways, after that happened, and she comes out, and they're the two factions, the North and South Freemen, are going at each other. Paul's like, no, she trained to take poison or whatever. You know, I'm not the Messiah or whatever. It cracked me up because 2 seconds later you see, what's that guy's name? He's like, oh, that's what a true Messiah would say.
I love that. That was Stilgar. I thought he was great. He was a little more comedic effect in this, but I think it worked. Like in the book, he's not so much like that, but I love that line where it's like, oh, the Mahdi is so humble. That's how a Mahdi would be.
My theater was laughing, but like in a good way.
Yeah, I thought he was really funny, and still, I mean, his character still remained pretty much the same besides that, so...
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's like just like such blind followers. Like, oh yeah, that's what they say. Oh, this, that. But like at the end, you know, he's right, I guess, or maybe he is.
And that thing you mentioned of where he says like he sees friends turn into religious fanatics, that was pulled basically directly from the book. And I think that line in the book was one of the lines that stuck with me the most. And I'm very glad they put it almost word for word in the movie. Okay,
so they appeased you.
They did.
I like that character, his little trainer buddy. What'd you say his name was again? Stilgar. Okay. Yeah. I thought his character was great. Like I really enjoyed him. I really enjoyed the Freeman in general. Even Zendaya's character.
Chani.
Is it Chani or Johnny?
It's Chani. I, in my head, pronounced it as Channy. So every time they said it, I was like, who's Johnny? But yeah, it's Chani.
It sounded like they said Johnny, not Chani.
Yeah, it definitely did.
I liked their relationship, and I'm curious if their relationship is similar in the book, but I liked the romance. I thought it was a good, you know me, sucker for a little bit of romance, but I thought they played, like they had good chemistry, and I liked their conversations about I'll love you as long as I breathe. And then, stuff happens, and even towards the end, he says that, and then, then all that happens where he's asking for that hand in marriage and this and that. Like he keeps reiterating to her that my feelings will never change, but then he's kind of going more and more and more farther over the rails. So it's like with Chani, like I totally get where she's coming from, because I don't know if I'd believe him either with all the stuff he's doing. Like Paul's an interesting protagonist because he almost turns into a bad guy, I feel like, in a way.
It's a very gray area. Yeah,
like that's why I think Chani's character is so interesting, because I feel like she's like us, right? She's like, no, dude, chill, dude. Like she's the audience, I feel like. And even the last shot of the movie, it felt like, I don't know, like we're supposed to feel what Chani's feeling. Like I feel like that's what the director was trying to do, is like, like we totally understand. Like I'm kind of on Chani's side, even though I get what Paul's doing.
Yeah, I agree with you that their chemistry was great and their relationship was really well done. There's definitely, I feel like her character is probably the most changed from the book. I may have to think about that. I think we'll get more into that in the spoilers for the book, but I still don't mind it as much. It definitely was different, and I think I like the character more in the book, but I see why they changed it because of that reaction you had where she's basically in the book, Paul's kind of struggling with that in his own head, but you can't really show that in this kind of movie because you don't have internal dialogues really. So I feel like they gave those parts to Channy to kind of show that to the audience. So I'm okay with it.
Sense. Okay. Yeah, because I like as a non-book reader, I thought it was great. I don't know. I felt like she was like the anchor for him, and he was slowly getting away from her, even though he kept reiterating. And maybe like I almost believed him and I didn't believe him. So I guess what I'm saying is I like the dynamic and I get where Chani's coming from and where Paul's coming from. And I think that's good writing.
For sure. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I thought their relationship was really well done. It was good in the book and it was good in the movie.
I liked, obviously, the worms are awesome. I'm sure
they
reading
looked
the
great.
book. I like the worm writing, and
they did the worm writing really well from the book. And it's not
is
even
that how you pictured it?
Yeah, because they go into the book about how like they lift up the layers and it keeps the worm upright because it doesn't want to get the sand into it to irritate it. And they showed that, but they didn't have to explain it.
Yes,
like, I thought that was a really cool nod to the book readers.
Yeah, so really, I'm going to be curious because when we get into spoilers of the book, I'm going to want to know, are there, you don't say it now, we'll get into spoilers, but are there differences you did not like?
Not that I hated. There's some that I am less sure why they did it, maybe. Okay. There's some I get, like there's some things you just can't do in live action. I have them all listed out, so I can kind of talk about the ones I there's one in particular that comes to my mind that I'm not sure why they changed it, but it might just be runtime, honestly.
Yeah, it was already 3 hour movie almost. So then just a couple more things I'll say. The one character for me that felt a little out of place.
Let me guess. The Emperor.
Yes.
Yeah, same.
Yes. And it's not that I don't like Christopher Walken. Obviously, I like him. It just felt so out of place for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's not how I pictured him at all. As an emperor of like the entire galaxy, he just didn't seem intimidating, I guess is the right word.
Like Christopher Walken almost felt like he just like did this for the paycheck. Like it didn't even feel like he was like into it.
Yeah,
right. Like I don't know, I was watching him and it just felt like bland.
It felt like he was playing himself, kind of just himself as an emperor. It wasn't horrible.
No, it wasn't like distracting or anything. It's just everything else was so like great. That was the one part I'm like, oh, okay, the emperor could have been more interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
I liked his daughter. I guess you haven't even read second books and stuff, but I'm curious to see how like where that goes, her and Paul's relationship goes. Because I have a feeling it's gonna be one of those things where I don't know if you know or not, but I obviously don't know. One of those things where like they start off hating each other and maybe they kind of grow respect for each other and maybe fall in love and it's a love triangle. I don't know. I'm just like spitballing.
I'll have more to say about that in the spoilers.
Okay, but I liked her character as interesting. That's where like the political side started coming in, and I like that too. Kind of like that Game of Thrones political fantasy sci-fi kind of sci-fi for this. But I guess the last thing I just want to mention is just the epicness, dude. Like there's moments where like when Paul's walking up that cliff and just that sea of people down there,
and even the shot before he got there where he's walking through the crowd and it just like zooms from above. That it's just the scale of it is just insane.
It felt I haven't felt this epicness since like Lord of the Rings, like in the sense of just epic.
I saw a lot of people comparing it to Lord of the Rings, and I kind of get that. Like it's this generation's Lord of the Rings with that kind of big shots, epicness.
Yeah, just even in the battle, I will say I wish I saw a little bit more of the battle, but at the same time, I feel like this movie wasn't about the battle.
Yeah, so my thoughts on the battle, I totally get that. People were hoping for like a Helm's Deep 40-minute long battle, but that's not really the point of the movie or the book. It's more about Paul understanding both the tactics of the Harkonnens and the desert, whereas the Harkonnens don't understand the Fremen at all, and they don't understand the desert. So it makes total sense that Paul, with that knowledge, would be able to just unite the Fremen and just run them over. It's more about like the tactics of it.
The tactics of it and like I feel like the politics of it and the revenge of it. But the little bit we did see of it was freaking epic. Like it looked awesome.
Amazing.
Like and even the shot of the Emperor's ball ship thing coming down.
That ship looked so cool. I really liked that ship.
Yeah. And the worms going over that cliff and coming towards the army. Like, dude, it looked like, my God, it looked epic. So the only reason I wish I would have saw more of the battle is just because how epic it freaking looked.
Yeah. And the shot of Paul just standing there and the worm cresting in the background. Like, there were so many cool shots.
It's been a long time since I've seen a movie, like, so confident in the epicness.
Yeah, I agree.
Some movies try to be epic, and it's like, Okay, but like this movie like actually is epic, and then the ending was cool. I loved the duel. That duel was freaking awesome at the end. The ending duel.
Yeah, I loved how the music completely cut out. It really like highlighted that as an important
Yes.
moment. It was a really cool
Yeah,
hand-to-hand fight.
and look, I liked Dune Part 1, but Dune Part 2 made me love this universe. And
Yeah.
that's where I'll leave it, and I'll kind of let you say your thoughts, and then we can get into spoilers on book comparisons.
I agree that I absolutely love this universe. I want more of it now. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to wait. We might go read some of the next books. We have the next 2. We might wait a little bit to read them.
Yeah.
But yeah, this universe is so interesting. The way they did the different planets. I just want to see the other homeworlds of the different families and stuff now, because I feel like
too.
all of them are going to be interesting. Caladan looked cool. Arrakis looks amazing, and then Giedi Prime especially was just so unique as a planet. I honestly can't remember enjoying a movie as much as this. Obviously, we like saw Godzilla -1, and it was amazing. But it's just the scale of this, the epicness, the great world building, and the universe. It just all came together for me. It's so right up my alley. I loved it.
Plus, we're suckers for sci-fi.
Yeah. Why couldn't the Star Wars movies be like this? The new ones.
Oh, dude. God, could you imagine if there's a Star Wars movie like this? My God. Oh, my Lord, dude. Don't say that. But seriously, could you imagine having a Star Wars movie filmed like this?
If only.
My God. Anything filmed like this, like, oh, it's so epic. You're right. That was a good way to put it. Like, this is almost like this generation's Lord of the Rings. Like, it's different than Lord of the Rings, I feel like, in the sense of the type
For
of
sure.
movie. Like in the epic scale. Oh, I can't wait to rewatch. I'm telling you, this one made me want to go back and rewatch part 1.
Same.
Anything else you had before book spoilers?
I think that's it. We could probably get into book spoilers now.